Imagine going through one of the most grueling, high-tech, digitally monitored medical procedures on Earth. I mean, we're talking about IVF here.
Right. It is incredibly intense.
Yeah, it really is. You're dealing with these totally sterile laboratories and, precisely timed synthetic hormone injections.
Oh, and the algorithmic protocols?
Exactly, the microscopic evaluations. It's a marvel of modern engineering, honestly. But imagine that the key to actually making all of that million-dollar technology work doesn't come from some new pharmaceutical drug,
Right.
but from a tiny needle placed in the skin and
Yeah.
following a physiological map that was literally drawn thousands of years ago.
It completely flips the script, on how we view reproductive medicine.
Yeah, it really does.
Because we have this tendency in the West to treat the human body like a combustion engine. We just assume that if we provide the correct chemical inputs, we are guaranteed a specific mechanical output.
Like pushing buttons on a machine.
Exactly. But human biology, particularly when it comes to creating new life, it's just infinitely more complex than a machine.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring this really fascinating intersection where ancient practice collides with cutting-edge reproductive
It's
science.
such a great topic.
It is. And our source material today revolves around a landmark June 2026 meta-analysis. It was published in the highly respected journal Frontiers in Endocrinology.
A very heavy-hitter journal.
Definitely. And we're pairing that with a really insightful clinical breakdown of that data provided by the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness.
And the reason this specific research is sending absolute shockwaves through the reproductive medicine community is because of who it helps.
Right.
It focuses on a patient population facing, honestly, one of the most frustrating and daunting diagnoses in the entire fertility landscape.
Diminished ovarian reserve,
Exactly. Diminished ovarian reserve.
otherwise known as DOR. So if you are listening to this and you've been through IVF or, you're supporting a partner who is, you might already know the heavy emotional toll of those three letters.
Yeah, it's a very tough diagnosis.
It is. But to really grasp why this 2026 study is such a massive breakthrough, we need to understand the actual biological roadblock these patients are hitting.
Right. So diminished ovarian reserve, in the most basic terms, means a woman's ovaries have a significantly lower quantity of eggs remaining than, well, what is expected for her age.
Because women are born with all the eggs they'll ever have, right?
Exactly. We know that every woman is born with a finite lifetime supply of eggs.
Right.
And that supply naturally declines as the decades pass.
Sure, that's just normal aging.
But for women with DOR, that depletion happens at a dramatically accelerated rate.
And I think people assume this is some isolated, rare medical anomaly, but the sources point out that DOR affects roughly 19% to 26% of all women undergoing IVF in the United States.
Yeah, it's incredibly common.
That is a quarter of all patients walking into a fertility clinic.
And the clinical reality for that quarter of patients is just incredibly harsh. The data shows that 91% of women with a DOR diagnosis experience severe infertility-related health impacts.
Wow, 91%.
Yeah, they face much higher rates of miscarriage. And they also face a significantly elevated risk of having their entire IVF cycle canceled halfway through.
It's canceled, like they don't even get to the surgery.
Right, because the body simply isn't producing enough eggs to even justify going into the operating room for a retrieval.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to make sure we understand how this is actually diagnosed in the clinic. I mean, how does a doctor look at you and say, you have DOR?
Well, it comes down to blood work and ultrasounds.
Right. The sources mention specific thresholds for FSH, AMH, and AFC. What are those telling us?
Those are basically the three vital signs of the ovarian environment. Let's start with FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone.
Okay.
Doctors look for a level at or above 10 IUL as a major red flag for DOR.
Wait, if the hormone is meant to stimulate follicles, wouldn't a high number be a good thing? It sounds like, the body's working really hard.
It is working hard, but for the entirely wrong reasons.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Think of FSH as the brain shouting at the ovaries to get to work and grow an egg.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If the ovaries are healthy and responsive, the brain only needs to use an indoor voice. A low level of hormone is enough.
Right.
But if the ovaries are tired and depleted, they just don't respond. So the brain has to shout louder and louder. It pumps out more FSH.
Oh, I see.
So a high FSH level means your brain is essentially screaming at an empty factory.
Wow. That paints a painfully clear picture. What about the other two markers?
So next is AMH, which is anti-Müllerian hormone. If that drops below 1.1 ng/ml, it's a very strong indicator of DOR.
And that's another blood test.
Yes, AMH is basically a blood test that acts as a rough inventory check of the microscopic eggs remaining in the vault.
Got it. And the last one.
Finally, there is the antral follicle count, or AFC. This one is done via ultrasound.
Okay, so they're actually looking at the ovaries.
Exactly. The doctor is physically counting the number of visible resting follicles that have the potential to grow that month. An AFC below 5 to 7 means the monthly candidate pool is extremely low.
So if an IVF cycle is like, I don't know, a high-stakes baking competition, a DOR diagnosis essentially means your pantry is almost entirely out of ingredients before the timer even starts.
That's a really good way to look at it.
You just have a massive disadvantage. But why does traditional high-tech IVF struggle so much with this specific empty pantry scenario? Like, can't they just use more of those expensive fertility drugs, just pump up the dose?
That is the logical assumption, right?
Yeah.
But it just doesn't work biologically.
Why not?
Well, conventional IVF is built on the concept of ovarian stimulation. The standard protocol uses high doses of injected hormones to coax the ovaries into maturing 10, 15, or 20 eggs in a single month, instead of the usual one.
Right, they want a big harvest.
Exactly. But if the baseline reserve is depleted, pumping the body full of massive doses of synthetic hormones is like pressing the gas pedal to the floor on a car with an empty fuel tank.
Oh, wow.
You just flood the engine. You literally cannot force the ovaries to produce what they do not have.
Which means patients are spending tens of thousands of dollars on medications that their bodies physically cannot respond to.
It's devastating for them.
I can't even imagine. And that desperation for a different approach leads us directly to the June 2026 meta-analysis.
Oh, exactly.
Because if traditional IVF hits a brick wall when the pantry is empty, I would expect any complementary intervention to just yield, I don't know, a tiny fractional improvement.
Right.
But the data from this new study is staggering.
It really redefines what we consider a successful complementary treatment. And we have to highlight the scientific rigor here.
Right, this wasn't just a survey.
No, this was not a single small-scale trial conducted in a vacuum. This meta-analysis was spearheaded by researchers at the affiliated hospital of Gansu University of Chinese Medicine, alongside the National Clinical Research Center for Obstetrics and Gynecology at Peking University Third Hospital.
Massive institutions.
Huge. And they scoured 8 major medical databases, synthesizing 11 high-quality randomized controlled trials.
Just to pause there for a second, randomized controlled trials where patients are randomly assigned to either the treatment or a control group that is the gold standard for proving cause and effect, right? Because it strips out the bias.
Precisely. You can pick those results.
Yeah.
And they pooled data from 885 women diagnosed with DOR who are undergoing IVS or ICSI.
And ICSI is when they inject a single sperm directly into the egg, right?
Yes, exactly. It's an even more targeted form of IVF.
Let's get into the actual numbers they found. Because in the context of an empty pantry, every single egg retrieved is incredibly precious.
Every single one matters.
The study found that women receiving acupuncture had, on average, plus 1.72 more eggs retrieved per cycle.
Nearly 2 extra eggs.
Right. And when your baseline follicle count is under 5, getting nearly 2 extra eggs can literally double your chances of creating a healthy embryo.
And it isn't just about the quantity either. The quality metrics improved in lockstep.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The women in the acupuncture groups yielded plus 1.50 more optimal quality embryos.
Wow.
These are the embryos that scientists grade as having the absolute highest statistical probability of surviving the freezing process, implanting in the uterus, and actually leading to a healthy baby.
The physiological markers backed it up, too, from what I read.
They good.
On the day of the trigger shot, which is that final injection before the egg retrieval surgery, the acupuncture group had estrogen levels that were plus 318 pgml higher.
Right. And that proves the follicles were developing more robustly.
Mm.
They were creating a much healthier hormonal environment.
Those are the preliminary laboratory metrics, though. But the outcomes that actually matter to a patient, the pregnancy outcomes, that is where this study separates itself from almost everything else in the field.
The final numbers are just incredible.
I'm looking at these percentages, and it's hard to overstate how massive they are in the fertility world.
Go ahead, read them off.
The embryo implantation rate, meaning the embryo actually stuck to the uterine wall, was 30 percentage points higher.
Yep.
And the source noted that this reached the highest possible level of statistical significance, a p-value of less than 0.00001.
Which means the probability of that result happening by random chance is virtually 0. It's definitive.
Then you have the clinical pregnancy rate, meaning they didn't just get a positive pea stick, they saw an actual fetal heartbeat on an ultrasound.
The real deal.
Exactly. That was 25 percentage points higher. And the ultimate metric, the live birth rate, bringing an actual baby home from the hospital, was 22 percentage points higher for the women who received acupuncture.
It's just phenomenal for this specific patient population.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Please do.
The fertility industry is, frankly, full of overhyped promises and expensive supplements that do absolutely nothing.
You're not wrong.
So when you see numbers this high for an intervention that has historically been brushed off by Western medicine, you have to wonder, is this just a massive placebo effect?
It's a fair question.
Or maybe, it was a small cherry-picked study where one specific practitioner just had a really lucky streak.
What's fascinating here is how the researchers anticipated that exact skepticism.
They saw it coming.
They absolutely did. They specifically tested for statistical heterogeneity to see if the results were bouncing all over the place.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, in medical research, results usually vary wildly from clinic to clinic. One study might show a 10% jump, another shows a 2% drop.
Right, because different doctors, different patients.
Exactly. But in this meta-analysis, the clinical pregnancy rate finding had an I-squared value of 0%.
0% variation.
Zero. Every single trial pointed to the exact same significant improvement.
That's crazy.
It is the statistical equivalent of lightning striking the exact same place 11 times in a row. It completely rules out a fluke.
Okay, that's really convincing.
Furthermore, they broke the data down to see if one specific, fancy technique was driving the results.
Oh, right, because there are different types of acupuncture.
Exactly. They compared traditional manual acupuncture with needles against something called TEAS.
Transcutaneous electrical acupoint stimulation, right.
Exactly, which doesn't even use needles at all. It uses electrical pads on the acupoints.
Oh, interesting.
They also looked at whether practitioners used a massive array of 10-plus acupoints or a minimalist approach with fewer than 10.
And what did they find?
In every single subgroup, regardless of the specific style or the number of points used, the clinical pregnancy rates improved significantly.
Okay, so knowing that it works with that level of consistency is fantastic. But if you were listening to this, you were probably asking the same thing I was. How?
Right, the mechanism.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does placing a tiny stainless steel needle in your ankle or your wrist alter the incredibly complex reproductive biology happening deep inside the ovaries?
It sounds like magic, but it's not.
Right. We tend to think of acupuncture as like a fancy massage technique to relax tight muscles. But these studies suggest it acts more like a biological IT department, essentially rewriting the software of the reproductive system.
That analogy is perfect, actually, because we now have the molecular data from 2024 and 2025 to prove it.
Okay, walk me through it.
The mechanism of action is multifaceted. First, we have to look at inflammation. A 2025 study on rats demonstrated that acupuncture fundamentally shifts the immune environment inside the ovaries.
So it's dealing with the localized environment where the eggs are actually maturing.
Right. If you have high inflammation, it is like trying to grow a delicate plant in a burning greenhouse.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Yeah. So IVF comes in and adds fertilizer, the hormones, but the plant still dies because the greenhouse is literally on fire.
Wow.
Acupuncture actually puts out the fire. It promotes the creation of M2 macrophages, which are anti-inflammatory immune cells.
So it's cooling things down.
Yes. And simultaneously, it shuts down the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines that cause oxidative stress and physically damage the eggs.
Okay, so it puts out the fire so the IVF fertilizer can actually work. That makes total sense.
Exactly.
But the sources also dive into genetics, which blew my mind. It isn't just calming inflammation, it's physically changing cellular instructions.
Yes, via gene expression. Whole transcriptome sequencing has shown that acupuncture regulates specific microRNAs in both the ovarian tissue and the early embryo itself.
Hold on, microRNAs. You're going to have to translate that for me.
Sure. Think of your DNA as a massive, overwhelming library of blueprints for every function in your body.
Okay, got the library.
The microRNAs are like the master librarians who decide which blueprints actually get pulled off the shelf and read by the cells. They act like volume knobs for your genes. The research shows that acupuncture physically turns up the volume on the specific microRNAs, like miR-154-5P, that are directly responsible for cell survival, growth, and early embryo development.
So it is quite literally changing which genetic instructions are being executed by the reproductive system.
Yes, down to the molecular level.
And the 2025 study also mentioned DNA methylation, right? Activating calcium signaling and vital pathways like Wnt and GnRH.
Yes, those are the master communication channels that tell an egg to mature properly.
And that communication relies heavily on the brain, which is the third major mechanism the sources talked about. Acupuncture isn't just a local treatment on your arm or leg, it's a neurological one.
Right, because how do the needle and the leg talk to the ovaries?
It has to go through the central nervous system.
Precisely. Fascinating neuroimaging research using functional MRIs looked at the brains of women with DR.
They actually put them in an MRI.
They did. And they found that acupuncture normalizes activity in a specific region called the superior frontal gyrus. It literally repairs the neural communication lines between the brain and the reproductive organs, ensuring the brain is sending the correct hormonal emails down to the ovaries.
And we really can't ignore the psychological impact of that brain-body connection either. The sources highlighted a 2024 systematic review proving acupuncture significantly lowers anxiety and depression in women with DR.
Which is huge.
It is.
Yeah.
Because anyone who has navigated infertility knows the sheer panic and grief it causes.
Absolutely.
And we know definitively that chronic cortisol and stress hormones negatively impact fertility outcomes. So this treatment is attacking the empty pantry problem on 4 distinct fronts, really.
Let's hear them.
The cellular environment, the genetic instructions, the neurological signaling, and the psychological burden.
Which perfectly explains why we see that I-squared value of 0% variation. It is a comprehensive biological reset.
But let's do a reality check here. If this is such a powerful biological IT reboot, how does it stack up against other medical interventions? Because IVF doctors aren't just sitting on their hands. They have other tools in their toolbox for patients with a low egg count.
They do. In the fertility world, these are called add-ons.
Okay.
And the comparison between Western add-ons and acupuncture is eye-opening. The Berkeley Center source references a massive 2025 meta-analysis published in the journal Fertility and Sterility.
Another big journal.
Very big. It evaluated 13 different standard medical adjuvant protocols for women with DR undergoing IVF.
So we are talking about very common medical protocols like DHEA supplementation or low-dose gonadotropins or dual stimulation where they try to stimulate the ovaries twice in 1 month.
Exactly. Those are standard Western add-ons.
How did those 13 standard interventions perform?
Out of all 13 protocols, only 3 managed to marginally improve the number of eggs retrieved.
Just 3.
Just 3. But here is the critical takeaway. Out of those 13 medical add-ons, none of them consistently improves the live birth rate.
Wow. Millions of dollars spent on these protocols, and none of them actually helped bring more babies home.
None. By stark contrast, this new 2026 acupuncture meta-analysis found significant, undeniable improvements across the entire board.
Right.
More eggs, better embryos, higher clinical pregnancies, and a 22 percentage point jump in live births.
So is this bulletproof? If we connect this to the bigger picture, how solid is the ground we are standing on with this 2026 data?
We have to maintain scientific nuance here.
Right, of course.
The researchers used the internationally recognized grade system to evaluate the quality of their own evidence.
Okay, what did they find?
The evidence for the clinical pregnancy rate, that massive 25 percentage point increase, was rated as moderate quality.
Okay.
In the context of the grade system, that is a very strong rating, meaning we can be highly confident the effect is real.
But the source noted the live birth rate and the egg retrieval numbers were rated as low or very low quality. Why the discrepancy? Did the treatment fail in those areas?
No. The low quality rating has nothing to do with the treatment failing or being ineffective.
Okay, then what does it mean?
In the grade system, a low rating usually comes down to sample size and methodology limitations. While the overall meta-analysis looked at 885 women, the individual clinical trials making up that number often had relatively small groups of participants.
Ah, I see. So it's about the math.
Right. The fertility world is still waiting on the massive, multi-million-dollar, multi-center acupuncture trials that we typically see for pharmaceutical drugs.
Because nobody's funding a huge study on tiny needles.
Exactly. So while the clinical pregnancy rate is highly reliable, the scientific community considers the live birth data incredibly promising, but technically in need of larger-scale confirmation.
That makes total sense. It's a matter of statistical power, not necessarily biological failure.
Precisely.
And when you are a patient weighing your options, a huge part of the decision-making process is the risk-to-reward ratio. What is the downside here? What does the safety profile look like?
It is essentially impeccable. Yeah. Across the 11 trials analyzed, there were 0 cases of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, or OHSS, which is a very dangerous complication of IVF drugs.
Wow,
There
0.
were 0 serious adverse events reported whatsoever. The only side effects were mild and temporary. Minor bruising, maybe brief soreness at the needle site, or mild skin redness.
Which is basically a rounding error compared to the side effects of traditional fertility medications.
Oh, absolutely.
So how is this actually applied in the real world for a patient? Because the source material highlighted the clinical approach from the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness, who have been specializing in this since 1997.
Right. They have a lot of experience.
They aren't just having patients walk in, throwing some needles in their back and hoping for a baby, are they?
Not at all. The entire philosophy is based on integrative medicine. They are not trying to replace the IVF doctor.
So it's a partnership.
Yes. They are working alongside Western reproductive endocrinologists. They take the foundational mechanisms of acupuncture, putting out the fire of inflammation, fixing the brain ovary signaling, and combine it with highly targeted orthomolecular supplementation.
Meaning they look at a patient's specific blood work and add things like CoQ10, NEC+, or melatonin to optimize the cellular environment further.
Exactly. They also utilize low-level light therapy, or LLOT, directly over the abdomen to support the mitochondria.
The powerhouses inside the developing eggs.
You got it. It is a comprehensive, individualized approach that uses Eastern medicine to rebuild and repair the pantry so that when the Western IVF doctor comes in to bake, they actually have the high-quality ingredients they need to succeed.
It is the ultimate synergy of two entirely different medical philosophies.
It really is.
So to bring all of these threads together, we've learned today that diminished ovarian reserve is a massive, incredibly complex hurdle that causes a quarter of all IVF patients to hit a biological wall. And the traditional high-tech approach of just pushing more hormones simply does not work when the ovarian reserve is depleted.
But this rigorous 2026 meta-analysis proves that we have a powerful, evidence-based complementary tool.
Yes, we do.
By physically altering gene expression via microRNAs, lowering localized inflammation, and repairing the neural communication lines between the brain and the ovaries, acupuncture significantly increases the number of eggs retrieved, upgrades embryo quality, and drastically boosts the chances of a live birth, heavily outperforming standard medical add-ons.
And it does all of that with an impeccable safety profile. But before we wrap this up, the source material's explanation of how acupuncture alters DNA methylation and microRNAs brings up a really provocative concept.
It absolutely does. And it forces us to rethink the boundary between a physical intervention and biology.
How so?
Well, if the simple, precise placement of a stainless steel needle in the skin can alter DNA methylation, meaning it physically changes which genetic blueprints are being read and executed by an early embryo, could acupuncture actually be altering how the body programs its own genetics at the exact moment a new life is forming?
Wow. It completely blurs the line between a traditional holistic treatment and high-level epigenetic programming.
Exactly. It is something to seriously think about the next time you hear someone casually dismiss Eastern medicine as just a relaxing placebo.
That is a thought that is going to stick with me for a long time. The idea that a map drawn millennia ago is unlocking the genetic potential of a modern IVF laboratory.
It's pretty amazing.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. To you listening, keep questioning the things you think you know, keep exploring new perspectives, and remember that sometimes the absolute most cutting-edge medical advancements are actually thousands of years old. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.